quiet. So we're going to get a little wake up. We're in the period of Slichot. And so now today, this Shabbat is focusing on the Jews of Yemen. And so I pulled out two things from this period. The first one, as you know, we do the shofar. So we don't do it on Shabbat, but recording is a different story. So here we're going to wake up. Here, and we do it right. If you look at the clock, if you can see, it says 4:20 in the morning. They do not sleep during this period. So here's our wake-up call. I think that woke you up. Yeah, that's the idea. Now, if you follow the Hebrew,
well, I would be okay because I get up.
The Yemenite Hebrew, that is the call of the 13 attributes. Adonai, God comes to in front of Moses and announces Adonai, Adonai, Rachum B'Chanun. So the prayer leader has said, and God is called unto Moses and said, and people are responding with the El Rachum B'Chanu while he blows the shofar. Now, here is a piyut, done very musically, but still fairly close to the original melody by Chaim Yisrael.
وعارقي ساعات تشوفاتي وشيبني واشوفات مدير ساعات تشوفاتي
Okay, so the highly true kati, to you, my God, is my desire, and you want to return to you, and I shall return unto you. The theme for this period of slichot, done very nicely. Musical accompaniment, which does not exist in authentic Yemenite music because they're not allowed to use musical instruments. And so now we open up our Shabbat morning service, brought to you by Hollywood Temple Bethel. And we're going to begin with the Shochen Ad, page 336 if you have the Siddur, 105 if you have the evening version, the Shabbat version. Welcome back, Daniel. We continue together. Shochen Ad Marom B'Kadosh Shemo B'Chatuv Ran Tzadikim Baranai LaYesharim Nava Tehila B'Fi Yesharim Tit'Halav U'V'Divrei Tzadikim Titbarach U'V'Shon Chasidim Titramam U'V'Keref Kedoshim Titkahadash U'V'Makalot V'Revot Amcha Beit Yisrael. We continue to the middle of the next page. Yishtabach Shimcha Lad Malkeinu El Hamel Hagadol V'Kadosh B'Shamayim V'Aretz Ki Lecha Noed Noeinu V'Elahei Avotenu Shir Shvachalev V'Zimra Oz V'Memshala Netzach B'Gdol Gvura Tila Tiferet Kedusha Malchut Berachot V'Odot Me'ata V'Yerolam Baruch Adonai El Melchadol B'Tishbachot El Odot Adon HaNiflot Abocher B'Shir Zimra Melech El Chei Olamim. And we continue with the Baruch Hu together. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch HaMevorach L'Olam Va'ed Baruch Atan Mecholam Yotzer V'Chashech Oseh Shalom Oret HaKol. We continue now to the Eladon, and we're going to sing it together our regular old way. Eladon al kol hamasim baruch barach befikon shama galo v'tuvo malei olam natu tzvuna sabavim moto hamigae al chayot hakodesh eda v'chavod al hamerkava zechut u'mishol lifnei cheso esed v'racham lifnei chevoso Tovim Meorot Shebara Eloheinu Yetzaram Bedad Bevinav Haskel Goach Pranatan Baem Liot Moshlim Bekerev Tevel Meleim Zivum Fikim Noga Noezivam Bechol HaOlam Smechim V'Seisam V'Sasim Bevoam Osim Be'emar Ritzon Konam Be'er B'Chavol Notim Shmo Sola Berina Lezechem Achuto Kora LaShemesh Vayizrachor Avehidkin Surat Havana Shevach Notim L'Kotze Ba'amarom Tiferet U'Gedula Srafim B'Afanim B'Chayot HaKochodesh. And we continue with the vision of the angels, giving the praise of God in the words of Isaiah, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. At the bottom of page 344, in Sidusim Shalom, בחו"ל מקבלים עליהם או מלכות שמיים זה מזה, נותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם, ונחל ראש אבינו הקדושה כולם כאחד בירה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, לארץ כבודו. ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש קדום מתנשאים לעומת סרפים, ואותם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבודני ממקומו. נהיה ברוך נאמר שאני מחבקם בזמן לפחות. And we continue the blessing, appreciating the light that we have, the order in the universe, and hoping that there will be a new order in human existence, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, create a new light upon Zion, bless you, creator of the lights. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, v'nizkach olanu me'ara li'oro, baruch atah Adonai, Yotzei HaMe'orot. And we're joining together, Havarab. Havarab Amtanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chem Lagidol Avitera, Amad Aleinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Baruch Avoteinu, Shebatchu Becha, Shebatchu Becha, Avinu Malkeinu. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תחננו תלמדנו, אבינו הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין, להשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמוע ולעשות, את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא ועטפנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, והביאנו לשלום מאהבה כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו כממיות לארצנו, כי איך ישועת אתה, ובנו בחרת מקלה בלשון, קרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע סלע באמת, להודות לך ויחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, אבוכי בנו יעשה באהבה.
Amen.
Okay, we take our tzitzit and we prepare for the Shema, and this time we have for our reading as it is read in the Yemenite style, and I'm going to use my cursor and go over the letters as he chants so you can listen to the difference in the pronunciation. And I'll say more about that later. So here we go.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מסועך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבונך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובגומך, וקשרתם לeth על ידך, והיו לטוטף בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשערך.
And we continue in the Hebrew. I'll scroll down the page to ourselves. Continue in the bottom of page 348. And on the screen, we take the tzitzit. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'mata lehem v'asu lehem tzitzit al kanfei bigdeihem ledorotam v'natnu tzitzit hakanaf betir techelet ve'lechem letzitzit v'ritem otos chatem ekol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam ve'lo tatoru achrei לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי הייתם קדושים לילכם אני אדוני אליכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני לכם אמת. Give me 1 second, I'm going to pull up something here. Okay. Now,
Right.
those of you watching us on Facebook,
Yes.
welcome
Okay.
as well. Just checking that in a second. It is working. And now we go ahead to the Amida, and I have also here.
Right.
Those of you watching us on Facebook,
Yes.
welcome as well. Checking that in a second. It is working. And now we go ahead. To the
Rabbi, there's an echo.
I know it's the Facebook page is echoing now. 1 second. Watching us on Facebook. Well, checking that in a second. It is working. And now we go ahead to the. Yeah, I know. I'm going to.
Hi, there's an echo.
I know it's the Facebook page. Okay, I think I got it to behave. Page is echoing now. 1 second. It is working. And now we go ahead to the. Yeah, I know. I'm going to try to silence it.
Hi, there's an echo.
Yeah, yeah. It's the Facebook. It's playing on Facebook. Okay, I think I got it to behave. Page is echoing now. 1 second. That was just for the technical follow-up. Okay.
سيرين عنوين عذر دلي وانا لما اسرائيل بعد شوعهم.
I jumped ahead of me also. Here we go. So we're coming to the Mika Mocha and the introduction to the Amida, which you'll find on page 185 in 350 in Siddur Sim Shalom over to 352. And so we're going to take the Mika Mocha, the verses right before it, and into the Amida, the first blessing of the Amida in Yemenite style.
تهلا ليل عليان بروخو مشاخل بني إسرائيل خامارو شيرا بسمحة ربا مرو خلام ميخام خابايلي مداناي ميكام خان أدر بقادش نراثي اللث عاصف فلا أذناي يملخ العالم وعاد وانا مرجالين واذن صمد شما قداش إسرائيل باروخ أذناي جاء الإسرائيل أذناي سفذي تفتح في جلتي اللذها ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב هويل الجودول الجبر والنور العليون جمل حسود مطوبين وقنا كل زغر حسد يوبر وما في غيل لابن بنيهم ما لخ رحمون مشيع ومغين بروخ أدوناي مغين أبراهام أتجبر العالم أذناي محيا مذي ما تعرف لا شيع مريض الطال مخلك الحين بحسد محيا مذي برحم مربيم رفع حليم سامخ نفليم متير سوريم مقيم منوثالي جن عفار ميخو مخو باع الجبروت وميذا ملاخ مميذا محيا وانا منطالة حيض مثيم بروخ أدوناي محيا مثيم نقدي شاخ وانا عريصاخ ونشلش لاخ قدو شومش ولا شاث كالدبر امور علي ذنبياخ وقرو زلزال ومار كذا وهذا ملاه عالم كله ومشار ذا وشال مزال وزا أي مقام كذا مشبح ومريد بروك كذا من مقام خام الكينوت نسي وذم لخالينو كما حكمان ولاخ مثيتم لغ بصيان بقرب بحينو بيومينو آمين تشكان تتجدل وتتقداش بذا غير وشولا يميروخ لذر وذر الناس احنا صاحيم وعنين وثيران وبمل خضع الزاخ كالدوار امر بشير قد شاخ عن يذدو اذا عهداخ ماشي حصل قاخ ابلا هذا العالم الا يقصيها النذر لذر وذر نجد جملاخ والناس احنا صاحيم قد الشاذق نقديش شباحا خذانو يلوهينو من بينو لا يموش كي المالخ جاذل وقدش آتا باروخ أدوناي هو إلك قدش
And we continue silently. I'll scroll down the pages. 358 and following. In the middle of the page, ומזבח שמך מעקן את מלמד, טוב לחיים טובים כל מיני. סלווה לשמך מאיר, ישתתן סלווה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך נעלה, On the bottom of the page, Sim Shalom. Amen. We'll go back to Sim Shalom. Go back to Sim Shalom and we'll join in together. I'll put it up on the page. Give me 1 second here. Page 362 in the Siddur. Let's join in the regular melody we all know. Sim, 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 shalom. Sim, shalom, tova, uvracham. Sim, sim, shalom, uvracham. Hein, v'chesed, v'yavo yisrael amecha. V'cheinu avinu b'echad Sim shalom tova uvracha sim shalom tova uvracha ki v'yochanecha nafata lanu Eino darat amat chesed utzedakah uvracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom sim shalom tova uvracha ha'olam sim shalom tova uvracha v'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol shah b'shlomecha sim shalom tova u'bracha sim shalom tova u'bracha baruch atah Adonai baruch Moiseh b'shalom. And now we come to our unit of study. We have still on the first chapter of the first sentence of the second chapter, because there are 3 different elements in here. Very last one, and when I read it, you'll tell me what it reminds you of. This is still Rabbi, the editor of the Mishnah. Istakel b'shlosha dvarim. Keep your mind on 3 things. You will never fall into the hands of sin. Da malamah mimcha. Well, this is the introduction. You know what's above you. What is it? Ayin ro'ah. There's an eye that sees what's happening in the world. All right. This is the idea of hashgacha. The eyes of God are eternally upon us. Be'ozen shoma'at. Everything is heard. All our actions are seen. All our words and thoughts are heard. And therefore, if we're seen, and if we're heard, we should keep in mind that there's consequences to our actions. It may not be in this life, in the next life, there are consequences. And then, kol ma'asecha b'sefer nichtavim. All your deeds are written in the book. Somebody tell me where they know that from? For this season, as we approach the new year, where is it? Right? No, my Tamidei Chachomim, where are you? Anybody want to venture a guess? B'sefer nichtavim. It's written in a book. No, okay. Unetane tokef. It's viad Chotem Yad Kol Adam Bo. The signature of every human being is in that book. It's right there. That's when it's on it. Okef. The author is taking it directly from this concept that what we have done does not simply vanish into the past. It's all recorded. The end of days we're held to account, right? If you keep that in mind, you'll never fall. That's what's going to keep you up. That's his words for us. We continue. Where are you? Put you in now. No. Okay. We continue. With the Kaddish the Rabbanan. Give me a second. I'll pull it up and let's recite the Kaddish Rabbanan. Yit Kadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabba. V'yama divra chirutei, v'yamich malchutei, v'chayechon, v'yamechon, v'chayeh dechol, Beit Yisrael, ba'galal, b'zman kariv, yimru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam, v'lomer maya. Yibarach, v'yishtabach, v'yipo'ar, v'yitraman, v'yitnasei, v'yit'adar, v'yit'aleh, v'yit'halal, shemed l'kudish ha'berichu, le'la min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbchata v'nechemata, namiram v'yamar v'imru amen. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Tamidei Hon, v'al Tamidei Tamidei Hon. Kol man doskim b'oraita, divat lein hadar, divat kol atar v'atar, Elachon ulachon, Shlomo Rabba, China v'chisa rachamim, Hayin arichin uzon eriche, v'korim mikorim v'vuhan di v'shmaya v'yarabim ramein. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim tovim aleinu v'akoisem v'ramein. Ose shalom bimramav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'akoisem v'imru. Amen. And once again, brought to you by Hollywood Temple Bethel. Those of you who are joining in, those of you watching on Facebook, we encourage your support, highly valued. And we come to opening the Ark, going to take the Torah from the Aron Kodesh, and we begin Ein Kamocha. Let's all join in together. Ein Kamocha B'Elohim Adonai V'Ein K'Ma'asecha Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim Omem Shaltecha B'Chol Dor V'Dor Adonai Melech Adonai Malach Adonai Yimloch Le'olam V'ed Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitei Adonai Yevaneh Et Avam Hashem Avor Rachamim Heitiva B'Tzon Tzidon Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Yivecha Levabatach Lecheram Benisa Adon Olamim Vayhi ben Zaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, V'yafuzu Oivecha, V'yanusu Mesanecha, Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, U'devar Adonai V'Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, V'kedoshato. And we continue with Be'an Arachetz. In him do we put our trust, and to his great name do we give praise. Hey, Be'an Arachetz, Belishmei Kadisha, Kadisha Yakirana, Amatush Bechon, Be'an Arachetz, Be'an Arachetz, Belishmei Kadisha, Kadisha Yakirana, Amatush Bechon, Tiftach libi behoraita, v'tashlim mishal libi, V'li barech olamach Yisrael Letavu chayim l'ishla. Amen. How we take the Torah figuratively from the ark, I recite and repeat after me. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai
Gadol
Shemo.
Adonai, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai Iti
Adonai, Ramama Shemo
Yachdav. Lecha Adonai V'Hatiferet V'Hanetach V'Hahod Ki Shamayim U'Aretz Ki Shamayim U'Aretz Lecha Adonai Amacha V'Amit Na'aseh L'Chol Erosh Romemo
Adonai
Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Adon Raglav Kadoshu Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Kadosh Yikadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Okay, now we come to our Torah reading. I'm trying to set up a little bit differently this time. Let's see if it's a little easier to read. Job and Lulu, I put you on the back shelf for this Shabbat because I found a Torah reader who's going to read it in the Yemenite style with the pronunciation and the trope, the cantillation. There's a series of discussions in this section, seemingly opening with warfare and going on with warfare, taking captive brides, to taking a man who's got two wives, and the older and the younger, which one should he prefer? And then suddenly the child is in trouble and they hang him, and then they hang the body and they have to take the body down over. A very strange progression of themes. So try to figure out what is in this, what is behind this. Well, one of the things, this is why some people noted that it is a woman prophet who gives the authorization, and maybe the woman got in and made sure that the text was pushing women's agenda. The women's agenda, women are molested and raped as prize in warfare down to the 20th century, down to the 21st century, ISIS being the top example. Copying themselves, they claim, on the Quran. And so what does the Torah try to do? This is looking back 3,000 years or so. Men are men. How can we control men? That's the concern. Who's interested in that? The women or the men? The women are interested. And people are looking out for the idea of family, of creating family, and the bond of a family are concerned. So now we look at this next series. Now begins the following. You go out for war against your enemy, you take your captives, and you see a beautiful woman. Fatwa, right? This guy, he wants him. Lekachta lecha leisha. Wait a minute, you desire, and you have to take her as a wife. Oh, wait a minute, I can't just take her and dump her. No, lekachta lecha leisha. All right, she shall be your wife. Oh, okay, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to marry her right now. No, wait a minute, you can't marry her right now. You bring her home, galcha et roshcha, shave her bald. I wonder if maybe the Hasidic custom of shaving a woman's bald was not somewhere inspired by that. To say, I want you to think carefully what you are doing, what you're getting into. So he looks at a bald woman. Okay, for a month he looks at a bald woman. And she makes her fingernails, which the rabbis mean, she cuts back her fingernails. Women would have, right till today, nice long fingernails adorned with polish, right? No, pull it all back. So there's nothing attractive, right? All this. And Hesir et Simlat Shibya, she was captive. She's wearing her beautiful garments, whatever it was that she was wearing at home. No. she's going to put on shmatis. All right? That's what she's going to do. And then a whole month, she's going to cry for her father and mother. You can imagine what she looks like after a month like that. Right? Then you may have relations with her, and then she is your wife. The simple way of marrying a woman in the old days was just you take her in your bedroom, and that's it. That's how you do it. There's no rabbi, no functionary, but that's it. That's definite. But what is she like after a month? What is his feeling like after a month? All right? This is like the child asks the Yiddish mama, can I go out and play? And the mother says, no, it's dark outside and it's cold outside and you're going to freeze yourself. They say, no, but go and play. Right? You sense that psychological play? If I said you may not, right from the start, the instinct is I'm going to do the opposite. But if I say, okay, but you do this, you do this, you do this, suddenly what happens? If you don't want her, you should set her free to her linafsha, for herself. You may not sell her off as a slave to anybody because you have abused her. You should not deal with her as an object. The word amir, etitamer, is you should not use her like a bundle of wheat that you buy and sell. You have abused her. All right? Notice that progression. Okay, so now the captive woman now must be a wife. She must be accorded all the honors of a wife. All right? That's the first thing. Now, the rabbis felt the next progression. Man has two wives. He loves one. He loves the other. Guess who he loves? After the outcome, the rabbis make the connection. Now, guess who he loves? He loves the new one. All right, because she's younger, prettier than the first wife. Okay, that happens, right? But the firstborn is of the unloved. Rabbis make that connection, right? You have the son of the beautiful woman, captive, and the son of the first wife. Not so. So you like the son of the first wife, right? Who has that? King David has that with Bathsheba, right? We're not going to do it. No. Whatever King David did, we're not going to do. And then you may not favor the son of the loved woman over the son of the unloved woman. It's by birth order. We're going to put order in here. Again, we're looking at the structure of the family and the solidity of the family. And then what happens next? So now the rabbis make the connection. Okay, so this beautiful woman and the father now have a son. Since he's the son of an improper marriage to begin with, because he shouldn't have really dealt with her in the first place, whatever it is, obviously the son's not going to be a good kid. So now, what happens? He becomes a ben soreh moreh, right? Rebellious and stubborn son. Okay, so the rabbi is going to say, well, what is rebellious and stubborn? And they come with all sorts of limitations. He has to be between the ages of 12 and a half to 12 and a half, in between. Because if he's under that, he's not liable for anything. If he's over that, he's an adult, no longer under your control. So it can only be like at 12 and a half. And soreh moreh has to do certain things. He has to like grab food from the refrigerator and empty out your refrigerator. That's an example. Empty out your refrigerator. If it's the neighbor's refrigerator, it doesn't count. He has to get you so angry, right, that nothing helps. And so now, and this is interesting again, and then the voice of the father and the voice of the mother. Rabbis ask, why is it repeated? Voice of the father and voice of the mother. Why don't they just say the voice of father and mother? If the father and mother are not complete agreement, the voices are not identical. They are differing on something in any way. It's not, child is not liable, right? Notice all these excuses. But one other thing, right? So you can see, by the way, in the end, he is hung. Okay. They take him to the judges. The judges, not the parents, have the right. But what else is it? The father and the mother together have to bring the case. It is not the father's right to have the child executed on his own. It is not the father's right to have the child executed without the justice system. For example, the child is a juvenile delinquent. No longer does the father have authority over the family on life and death issues. The father and mother combined have the authorities, not the father alone. That's number one. Number two, where does life and death? It goes to the justice system also. So what we have done is taken away what the Romans called jus pater familias. The father is the absolute law. No, the father is no longer the absolute law. A big change in civilization. Kid's a bad kid, he gets stoned. The rabbis say, no child ever was stoned. There never was such a Jewish child, never existed. We can't imagine it. It's only written here. So the kids, when they're growing up, they read it, and they're afraid of mom and dad a little bit. And then the final, in this section, is now, since that child has now been a criminal, that criminal must not be allowed to be left overnight. What did people do in antiquity with their enemies? Impaled them on a stake, left them hanging till they rot, so that everybody would be scared straight. No. He may be hung. He's not impaled on a stake, but hung, but not overnight. After the execution, he must be taken down because it defiles the land. And again, right? Even the dead, as the rabbis say, reminds people of the image of God. Klalat Elohim, Talui. People curse God when they see someone who's been executed by the courts. Or they curse the courts also. Because they think, look, there's still a human being. Or as the rabbis say, that dead person is also in the image of God. And people can come to doubt, where's the justice of God if someone could do something like this? All right? So, all this in a thread would say, a thread, one leading to the other. It's not a guy writing this, right? It's not a guy writing this. Or it is, it's the prophetess Huldah, or she's inspired, but it's this hand of a different look at things, trying to elevate us, even when we have our passions. So I'm going to have this reading read for us. Joe Alexander, would you do us the honor? Go ahead. And Barbara's also here. Barbara, join in with him. I haven't seen you also. Come and join in with us. We're going to do just the blessing of the opening blessing. I'm not really doing the full reading. So go ahead. Baruch Hu, go ahead.
Baruch Hu es Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Vorach Olam Voed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher b'chabone mikol amim, v'natan lanu et torusoi. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ours in the Yemen. Amen. And now the Torah reader.
شوماي مورس كي تسلم الحما على يفاخا ثنا ذنو يلخا بيوذاخا وشوفي ذو شبيا ورأيذا بشبيا إيشث يفتر وحوشك توبا ولو قحتو لخا لإشاء وهبذا التق بذاخا وغلحا أثرشا وعوسذا أتصبرنا سيرات سملت شبياه معولا ويوشوا ذبثاخا وباخذا ثوبي وذمه يا رح يوميم وحركين توبيلا وفعلته وهو يذوله للشاء وهو املحه فاستباه وشلحته لنفشاه ومغلد مكرنا بكو ساف لؤثث عمر باه تحت شرع النثاه
Okay, if you can follow, you notice the difference in some of the pronunciations. I'll speak more about it. It is, in some ways, similar to pronunciations among Ashkenazic Jews. Instead of O, like the oi, a little bit like the oi in Galician Jewish pronunciation, Hungarian Jewish pronunciation. The O, as an Ashkenazi, and also among the Persians. One of the other things, the vav, the wow, you find that. I think also the Persians have that too. So some interesting similarities across the miles. We now continue with the prayer for all those who are ill. Prayer for those who are ill, and we pray. Is it Marcelo? Marcelo is not feeling well. Give him our wishes and prayers, please. And we add Esther Elisheba, Pinchas Berteskovsky, Miriam Leodorf, Vyatsa Bengalina, Moisey Kelchik, Mindy Levin Pfeiffer, Jennifer Levins, Ronnie Duran, Harriet Levins, Moisey Ben Manya, Barbara Moorman, Esther Gearson, Joe Alexander, Barbara Drato, Roger Rosen, Rachel Aflalo, Jenny Drato, Michael Schinder, Susan Tuchman, Shirley Marco, Shira Feinberg, Judy Alkali, Richard Zeller, Carmen Fraser, and Liva Batsara, Chana Batsara, Eliyahu Ben Chana, and Shoshana Bat Chana, Herb Moorman, Irina Hosepian, Alex Trebek, Chana Sar, Leah Bat Rachel, Shum Meir Ben Rachel, Chana Sar Bat Kayla Alta, Alan Wayland, and Hai Ernesti. Please let me have any other names of those.
Rachel Bat Ventura.
Rachel Bat Ventura.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noah.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noach.
Sima Harlev.
Sima Harlev.
Ronan Ter Harlev.
Ronan Ter Harlev.
Susan Feinberg.
Susan Feinberg.
And Sharon Whitman.
Sharon Whitman. And any
And
other?
Rabbi, Yehudit Liba Bat Chana Rachel.
Yehudit Liba Bat Chana Rachel. If you're feeling much better. And
Wendy Keller.
Wendy Keller. And all those who are ill, we pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be He, send them healing both in body and in mind. Kodesh Baruch Hu yishlach lehem refuah shlema, refuat nefesh, refuat haguf. B'toch shar chesed b'chol ha'amim. Amen. We send them healing to them and to the whole house of Israel, to all people. We say Amen. And let's join in, bring in Debbie Friedman with the Mishabah.
And let us say, Amen.
everybody on healing and well-being and wellness. And now we come to our Haftarah. We're still in the series of Haftarot of Consolation. It's a very short one. It's repeated one other time during the year also, one of the other Shabbat Parshot. Rani Akara, sing, O barren one, you who have not given birth, now you will have many children. Kirabim b'nei shamemak, so many will be the children of the one who was abandoned. Archivim ekom alech, you'll need more space in your tent for all of these, for this ingathering, right? Do not anymore be ashamed and embarrassed, right? This consolation, the exile is over, you are being redeemed. And the one who made you is your husband, is God, right? Your husband is God. He brings you back in, right? You may have felt abandoned. No, you're not abandoned. You are like the woman of his first love. Can anyone cast that wife off? So it may have been a small anger, but now I bring you back with vast love. And so that is the theme of the Haftarah. Rani Akara. Rani Akara lo yalada pitchi rina v'tzahali lo chalaki rabim b'nei shamemar mibnei bula amar Adonai harchivi mikom alech yeriot mishkinotech yatu al tachshochi v'her tarichi metrach tarichi hasiki ki amin usmol tifratzi v'zaraich goyim yirash varim neshamot yoshivu al tiri ki lo tevoshi val tikomi ki lo tachpiri ki boshet alumayich tishkechi b'chapat al mutach lo tiskeri ohod ki v'olayich osaich Adonai tzevaot shemo v'galech kedosh Yisrael el hekol haaretz yikarei ki hisha azuva v'ne'atzuva ruach karach Adonai v'eshet narim ki timais amar elahayich berega katan azavtich u'brachamim gedolim akabtzech v'shetzev ketzev histarti panai rega mimcha v'chesed olam richamtich omar golech Adonai Kiminach zodli asher nishbati me'avon menach od al haaretz ken nishbati miksof alach umiga arba'ach ki arim yamush v'agvaot tebutenu v'chasdi meitach lo yamush ubriti shalom lo tamut amar merachamech Adonai. The covenant of peace will never disappear. That's the word of consolation. So we continue now. The prayer for the country. It's a very sensitive time. We've had the convention, the Democrat convention, the Republican convention, each one trying to put this best case forward. The nation very tense this week. Another poor fellow was killed, Jacob Blake, and again, as a consequence, 2 more people were killed in the aftermath. A synagogue was spray painted with graffiti about Free Palestine, right? Everything is going apart. And it is so easy to fall apart. I was just outside my window this morning. Police were called. I watched it from my balcony. A woman had been disturbing the people in another building, called in for about an hour. They were talking to her, white woman, talking with her, and she was not cooperating. They pulled her in to arrest her. She struggled. I saw 5 police people on top of her, including mixed, what I could see, policemen of different origins, from that I could see as I could make it out, a woman police officer also. They spent an hour talking to her very nicely. And she was screaming and screaming wildly. And I could see how easy it is for something to get out of hand. And now we're all so tense, and so it is a very trying time. And so we really need to pray for our country. We say, our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity Justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry. Safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, neighbor shall not lift up gun against neighbor. Most of the killings are neighbor against neighbor in the United States, and the number one cause of death among people up till the age of 30. And it's neighbor against neighbor. So may that never happen. And let's say amen. Amen.
Amen.
And now, let us go ahead and we pray together for the people of Israel and the state of Israel. Join in. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, so Yisrael v'galo, Borech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmicha Gulatenu, Hagen Aleha, Bevrat Chasdecha, Ofros Aleha Leha, Sukat Shalomecha, Shachacha B'michal Asher Yatzea, V'taknei Beitzat Tova Milchanecha, strengthen the hand of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. So Yisrael B'galo, bless our land with lasting peace and its inhabitants with everlasting joy. And let us say, Amen. Amen. And we're moving along fine.
Amen.
So let's do Ashrei, which we haven't had a chance to do for some time. And we'll do a line by line. You can repeat. I'll do a line. You join in after me. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yelucha Sela. Ashrei Ham Shekachalo. Hashem Shanai Lahav. It's page 420 in Sim Shalom. I haven't been calling the pages. I apologize. Elo David. Aram Hai HaMelech. Babachashim Chal Elam Va'ed. The next line. B'chol Yom. Avachecha v'lashim chol elam va'ed. Gadol Adonai Olam Ha'od. Gdulato ein cheker. Dol Shabbat Masecha. Gorotecha Yagidu. Hadar Keboradecha. Divrei Neflotecha Sicha. Bezurotecha Yomeru. Gdulatecha Safrena. Zecher Avtucho Yabio. B'tzikcha Yaranenu. Chanun Rachamnai. Erchapam Gdol Chased. Tovenai Kol. Berachamav Akol Masav. Yaduchan Akol Masecha. V'chasidecha Yivachucha. Kevod Machutcha Yomeru. Gdulotcha Yedaberu. Nadil ve'agorotav, v'chvoratav machuto, machutcha machut kol amim, emshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador, tomech Adonai l'chol naflim, v'zokef l'chol hakfufim, einecha lecha yisaberu, v'ata neten et ha'cholam be'ito, potech et yedecha masbil chai ratzon, tzadik Adonai b'chol rachav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav, Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol hashukru v'emet, Ritzon Rabbi Yaseh, Bet Shavatam Yishmar v'yotziem, Shomer Adonai kol haba, Bet kol hasheim yashmid, Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'vorech kol b'asher shikot shalom v'ed, v'anachnu nvarech yam yatov v'olam, Hallelujah. And we take our Torah, return it to the ark, figuratively. Let's all join in. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kineskav Shemo Levado, Hodol Eretz V'Shamayim, Vayarem Keren Le'amot Tehila Alecho Chasida, Livnei Yisrael, Am Kerova, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Mizmor David, Avuladonai Elim, Avuladonai Kavalos, Avuladonai Kavod Shemo, Ishtach Avuladonai Behadrak Kodesh, Kolanaim Kavodim, Adonai Maim Rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'akam, Kol Adonai Be'adar, Kol Adonai Shaber Arzim, Vayshaber Adonai Zehal, Vayakidem Ku'eyavom V'Siryon, Kemo Ben Reimim, Kol Adonai Chotzim Navotesh, Kol Adonai Yachim Ebar, Yachil Adonai Midbakadesh, Kol Adonai Yachol Lelayalot, Yechasofer Oto Yachalot Kolo, Omer Kavod, Adonai Lamamun Yashavayim, Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitain, Adonai Yivarech Et Amo V'Shalom. ובנוחו יאמר, ילקח טוב נתתי לכם טהרתי אל תעזובו. Together. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה בתוכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכינו בכל נתיבותיה שלום אשיבנו אדוני אליך לשמה חדש ימינו חדש ימינו כקדם. Okay. This Shabbat, we're doing a lot more of our regular melodies because there are a lot of elements that we have in our service that are not in the Yemenite service. Their prayer book predates both the Sephardic and the Ashkenazic. They go back to the core text as developed in the period of the sages of Babylonia, the end of the Talmudic period. So a lot of the songs that we know aren't there. They did incorporate other things though, from Kabbalistic sources that came in much later. So we're back to our own melodies on these old favorites, like En Kelohenu, the old favorite way. En Kelohenu, En Adonenu, En Kemakenu, En Kemoshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Emakenu, Mich Moshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emakenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Makenu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru Avoteinu, Lefanecha Eketore Asamihim. Now for Aleinu, I did find a nice Yemenite recitation of the Aleinu. So I'm going to put that up for us and we'll chant or we'll follow along with them as best we can. This is in the style of Sharab.
علينا لا شبه أحلى دون الكل لا تذكذ الله ليسر برشيد شل عصانو كغيه أرصيث وليس مانو كمشبحث أذما شل صمح لقينو كهام وغير لنو كخلها منام شاهم بن شتاحاويم الله بالوريك ومذ فلاني ملئ الليعيل وانا حنو مشتاحاويم لفني مالخ ملخي هم مالوخي ما قدش باغوخو شاهون طاشو مايم وياسد آغاس ومشى يعقوب الشومايم من معال وشغينا عزب غوبه مغميم هو عليهن وين عذاحيغ الكنوا فسزلوته ككوثب بتغاء ويضعته هيم وهاشفثو للافو فاخو כי אדנו עליהם בשמיים ממעל ועל הורס מתחת אין עד.
And we'll continue. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. I want to point out one other thing, both in the Sephardic prayer books and the Yemenite prayer books, there's an extra line that is not in our Aleinu. It is right where it says, before we says, V'anachnu porim mishtachavim, and we have Shalosam Charkeinu Kahem Gorleinu Kochamon. We did not put our portion as theirs. And what is missing in our edition, Ashkenazic edition, is Shem mishtachavim lehevel v'arei. They are praying to emptiness and vanity, or vanity and emptiness. Why is it missing in the Ashkenazic prayer? Somewhere around 1700s or so, probably around that time, that's the presumption, accusations were brought against the Jews that when they recited the Aleinu, they came to this line that they worship emptiness and vanity, that this is an attack on Jesus. And the Jews would have a custom of spitting when they came to the word varei, because the same word for emptiness is the word for spit, or sounds almost the same, baruch, to spit. So it was a Jewish custom. And so they said to the king, they're spitting on Jesus. Well, where's Jesus? They said, take the letters, it must have been a renegade Jew, says, take the letters va-re, add up the numbers, and you see they add up the same numbers in value, gematria, as Yeshu, Jesus. They're spitting on Jesus. And so the story is, this is the purported story, that Jews were required to stand up and chant the Aleinu out loud and not recite that sentence, so that the police who were planted in the synagogue would come back to the king and say, yeah, the Jews have removed that verse. And it was removed from the printed editions. Sephardic, who lived among Muslim countries in the Yemen, lived among Muslims, they couldn't care less what Jews said about Jesus. So that didn't move them, and it stayed. Hasidim brought it back in, and apparently by the time that they started their printing presses, they were able to get away with it. They put back the Sephardic custom. But that's why, if you'll see, it's missing in ours, just for that simple reason. That is also why in other communities, Sephardic and communities in Mediterranean communities, Eastern and Mizrahi communities, Aleinu is not necessarily chanted out loud at the end of Shabbat service. Not a major part. We make a big thing of it because the police required us to do it. Now you know. Now you know the real story. Okay. What was that? There was that TV commentator that had a great show. He kept on saying, now you know the true story. That's it. So we come now to the Kaddish. I'd like to, let me pull this up 1 second. As we come to the Kaddish, I just got word that this is the Shloshim, 30th day since the passing of Mark Hirsch. That is the nephew of our dear Barbara Drata. She's here with us this Shabbat. I'm happy to have her with us. And that's the brother of Susan Blattman. So they sent us this tribute to him, and he passed away of cancer this a month ago, Thursday, July 30th, buried on July 31st. And Susan's words, what she missed most, the link to her parents. Hold on, I'm sorry. Hold on, I'm sorry. This is the wonders of technology. I apologize, it came on by itself. Renegade computers, they think for themselves. Okay, I apologize. So what she had said is, what I missed most about my brother was the link to my parents, both now deceased, reminiscing about our childhood and family life in Israel, our teen years as immigrants in the States, and as young adults living with our parents and grandparents in Brooklyn. He always told funny, sometimes annoying dad jokes, teased me mercilessly, like a big brother would do, prepared delicious Israeli salad that accompanied our bagels and Locke's weekend brunch. His love of the Sunday political newscast got me interested in these programs at an early age. I still watch Face the Nation. His love of reading and history influenced my own. Military buff with a deep and abiding love for Israel. Mark continued to read the Israeli newspapers in Hebrew until very recently. So due to the pandemic and Arizona's high rate of infection, I was unable to spend time with Mark prior to his death or attend his funeral. It's one of the saddest things that we have in this time. People really are not able to attend neither life's joyous nor life's sad occasions. That's my aside. I was heartbroken, she continues, by the direct impact the virus had on me. Mark's family and I therefore decided that if doable, we would try to Zoom the graveside services. Mark's beloved wife, Carol, and our son, Simon, and the rest of Carol's family were present at the Long Island Cemetery. Her compassionate rabbi, officiated, and funeral director handled the Zoom responsibilities. Carol and Simon eulogized Mark eloquently at his graveside. I spoke from my home in Scottsdale. In spite of the distance, we felt embraced by the warmth and affection of family and friends. We said our goodbye to Mark with a great deal of love and respect. Mark was deeply loved by his family, especially his World War II surviving grandmother we called Booby, his aunts and uncles and cousins. Be forever grateful to him for sharing his loving family with us, his wonderful wife, Carol, our remarkable nephew, Simon, my father's namesake, and Mark's stepchildren. He will be missed. And so we have his memory in our thoughts on this Shabbat. Barbara Dratow, I know you're very close with your nephews and nieces, and so we give you our condolences. We also mark the passing this week. Harry Kyle passed away just within this year. Harry Kyle. So we may the Holy One, blessed be He, shelter them in the divine presence. May the memories be for a blessing. Jewish community also lost another very beloved figure in the Los Angeles area, Phil Blazer, who had one of the Jewish newspapers and ran the Jewish television network here in Los Angeles. I had the pleasure of having him interview me for my book a few years ago. Then he fell into ill health in the last several years. So may his memory be for a blessing. Those reciting the Mornis Kaddish, please recite with me. Yitkadal, V'yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah. V'yama, Divrach Yirutei, V'yamnif Balchutei, V'chayachonu, V'yamechonu, V'chayedechol, Beit Yisrael, V'agalam Zman Kari, V'yamei, Yehi Shmei Rabbah V'rach, De'olam Omer V'yam, Yibarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ah, V'yitamam Yitnasei, V'yitadar, 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 Le'el Kovir Chata V'shirata, Tush B'chata V'chemata, Damiram Yalma V'imramein, Yehi Shlomo Rama Ben Shemayim, V'chaim Tovim Aleinu, V'akol Yisef V'ramein, Oseh Shalom V'imrama, Hu Yasem Aleinu, V'akol Yisef V'ramein. And again, brought to you from Hollywood Temple Bethel. Support your local rabbi, support your local synagogue. And we're going to wrap up with Aleinu. Before I get into Aleinu, just to remind you, we have, yeah, we're going. Adon Olam, Adon Olam. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. You're sharper than me. Thank you. And next week, I'm going to get us into the mood for the high holidays. I'm going to look at some key parts of the Siddur and some of the melodies. We'll go over and review our whatever we want to sing along with the Chazanim. We've put together, Carmen is doing all the legwork, the logistics. You have no idea how crazy it is to get this right. And the magician, Carmen, thank you. So we have Cantor Ehrman pre-recording sections for us. Cantor Bodai is also recording something. Andrea is recording some things for us. And then we have a selection of downloads that we're going to add. So it's going to be very varied and rich service. I have coming on 2 guest speakers during the course of high holidays. Richard Hirschhout, that is the son-in-law of our dear Alex Atmari. We'll do an interview with me on the state of the world and American Jewry. And Dr. Yitzhak Brooks, who spoke with us once before, give a presentation on Yom Kippur, reminding us of the Yom Kippur War from a doctor's perspective and how traumatic that was, most sacred day of the year, where we almost lost the state of Israel on that one day. And so that's part of the lineup. It is now in Eventbrite, and it's working now. It's set up, it's working. You can go through it also through Facebook. It'll click directly to Eventbrite. You can go to Eventbrite itself and search for us, or we'll be getting out emails again with the exact link. So that's all coming up. We'll need lots of help, helping hands. Carmen will need helping hands for a lot of things, so please do not be shy. Anything else? Carmen, do you have anything that you need to add? Are you there? What do I have? Who's on? Yeah, okay.
Wait, sorry,
Yeah, anything else to add?
No, is Yoni there?
I don't see him this Shabbat.
Okay, we got to make sure he put the link up on the website and some of the stuff.
Yeah, I sent him all the information,
Right.
also for donation button and so on. We also have a donate button on the Facebook page, and somebody did put in a donation. I just want to make sure we get credited properly from them, that they forward the money, so be on the lookout for it. Okay, with that, now.
Jeff.
Yes, Carmen.
Here. Okay, we're gonna have, I'm going to ask you and anyone else who can do some data entry to help me enter some of the written stuff up in our presentation tool next week. So we'll be doing. I've just been setting it up and customizing it for our use, and because they were meant for churches, so I had to take out all the references to churches and yada 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 yada, and customizing the software. So I've been doing that all this week, and so next week we'll start entering and doing all of that. Okay.
All right.
Okay,
right.
Carmen.
All right. So with that, I'm going to go to wrap up service with a Yemenite rendition of Adon Olam, but obviously not the way it's sung in the synagogue, because they would never use the instrumentation, whether it was Shabbat or weekday. So it's sort of an enriched version. The Yemenite music has lent itself very well to modern music styles, primarily because it was done without music accompaniment and primarily rhythmic. And so you could do any kind of scales with it. So here is Adon Olam, Tzion Golan, Boaz Gatka, and Moshe Shaddari. Here we go.
Adon Olam.
Let me get back to the beginning. Hold on. Just get this
מכירים את זה מבית הכנסת בסיום תפילת שחרית של שבת. לעת נסע בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבד يملخ نرى وهو يا وهو هوى وهو يا باري غرا باري غرا
كاسي بيا مقرا بيا مقرا وهو رفيق وهو مرفيق وهو صفا وهو عذراء وهو عذراء إيونا أفقد روحي بعث إيشان وعيرو وعيرو وعم روحي جاوياتي أذنا إلي ولا إيران بمقدوشة تغل نفسي ماشي حلو يشلح مهرا وأذنا شير بابد قادشي آمن آمن شمن نرا شمن نرا أدون عالم أشمالا بتم كل ياسر لي لعتنا بخفتوخو أزاي ما شامل يقرا شامل يقرا
רבותיי, רוצה להגיד תודה רבה לאנסמבל הנפלא הזה. על הגיטרה, עידן הרמוני, איפה הכפיים? על הקונטרבאס, אסף רבי. כלי הקשה.
Okay, we're going to say thank you to the band. They're introducing all the members. We will do without the further introductions. I'm going to go now into my topic for the Shabbat. Give it a second to come up. Well, there we go. Okay. So my claim to fame. We're going to do the serve the Jews of Yemen. And let's start this up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to say, what is my claim to fame? What's my right to talk about the Jews of Yemen? I'm Galician ancestry. Father grew up and trained in Vienna, and I'm born in Frankfurt and raised in the States. So what do I know about Yemenite Jews? It's by osmosis. My wife, Ofra, you all know Ofra. And at the end, I'm going to introduce some of our family to you. And her family very much tied into the classic rabbinic lineage of the leaders of Yemen. And I'll tell a little bit more about that. And I also lived in Israel as well, and for a few years worked in the Israeli Federation of Labor, Histadrut, ran a Center for Jewish Studies. It was designed to work with the, we'll call the traditional moderately Orthodox members of the Histadrut, predominantly Edot Mizrach, and heavily a lot of Yemenites, because the head of the Histadrut himself was Yemenite, and so there was a lot of loyalty to him. And so the people I worked with, many of them were also Yemenites. And so we picked up a lot of customs and practices along the way. Plus, my wife's uncle passed away a few years ago, blessed memory, the world's renowned authority on the origins and practices of the Yemenite Jews. So I'll say more about that later. This is Yemen. If you want to find it on a map, you go to Saudi Arabia, you head straight south through the Arabian Peninsula, you come to the end of the peninsula, and that is Yemen. Yemen properly is that mountainous region you can see in the picture that faces the Red Sea. And that part always was called, in antiquity, Arabia Felix, Happy Arabia, by the Europeans, because it was very rich, it was higher up, it was not exposed to the deserts, had rains, had good oases, very prosperous region. Sana'a on the south, the historic capital of Yemen, that's where you see the red drop point there. That's where the bulk of Jews of Yemen lived. Some lived in the south, where if you go down, you'll see just above the words Google, Gulf of Aden, and there where the marker is Aden. And that was a group of Yemenite Jews that became slightly anglicized. The rest of Yemen in modern times was Turkish and began to become Turkish in its characteristic. They remained Anglo in their characteristic. And the two communities diverged a little bit. Out here in the desert, around where it says Yemen, is the area of Hadramaut, in Hebrew, Chatzer Mavet, the courtyard of death. And that's where there was an unusual community of Jews in an area called Haban, also out of the Yemenite tradition, but very much to themselves in the sense that they were, if any of you remember my speech from a few weeks ago, they would carry swords, became bodyguards, hired by the Arab royalty because they trusted them more than they could trust their fellow tribesmen. So that is more or less Yemen. It actually at one time extended all the way into Oman. My brother-in-law in Houston had a good friend who was a Yemenite antiquities and dealer in Yemen, a Yemenite, who explained to me that when oil was discovered, there was actually a lot of oil in the Yemenite territories as well. And the imam gave them up. And he reduced his borders appropriately because he was afraid that the money from oil would ruin the character of the Yemenites. It was a very, very pious and strict Muslim regime. So we'll find out how strict. Notice across the way from Eritrea and Djibouti and Ethiopia. Also, you want coffee? This is where you get it from, the origin of coffee. That's here in Yemen. So, how did Jews get there? Tradition has it that already in the time of King Solomon, when the Queen of Sheba came to visit, Sheba, it's associated with presumably that part of Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, and that he sent representatives down back with him because there was a lot of trade that could be done. Solomon had his port in Etzion Gever, which is near what is today Eilat, and ships went out. Not just in Solomon's time, also centuries later, all the way down the coast of Africa. Tremendous trade, gold and spices. And so Jews were involved in that trade, and certainly we know that already by the 3rd century BC to the 40 BCE to the 3rd century CE, there's a lot of Jewish settlement already at that time. It was before the destruction even of the Second Temple. The Jews are beginning to saturate the book. The big growth is in the 2nd century and continuing into the 6th century. There was a king of the south, that area also known in that period as Himyar. So the Himyarite king, Toban, converted to Judaism at the end of the 5th century. And then in 518, his king was taken over by Zara Yusuf, who converted to Judaism and was known as Dhunuwas, which apparently refers to curly hair. He was not there for many years. He was defeated by Egyptian kings. The wars were very terrible wars. They were almost genocidal wars between the Jews and the Christians. Ethiopia and Yemen, Jews and Christians, right? We weren't always very peaceful. But Muhammad took over, and those of you know, Jews that were in the Hejaz, that area of Mecca and Medina, were expelled because Muhammad no longer trusted them for whatever the reason, so he didn't massacre, expelled, the bulk going north towards Syria and Damascus, and some apparently also being pushed into Yemen where they could get away. They were taken over by Muslims. It was still under the regular, we may say, mainstream Sunni Muslims. So for the next few centuries, they were fine until the Shiite Zaidi clan took power in the early 10th century. Now that's Shiites, the same people that became the religious force in Iran around the 1600s, and similar to the Alawi of Syria. Okay, and just to put it in perspective, Alawi, the tribe of Assad. We have here an example of an early inscription, 3rd century, in the kingdom of Himyar. I think this is from a tombstone because I see you can make out the Hebrew. They're using the square script that we use today. It looks like Zachor Latov, of blessed memory. Amen and Shalom. That is what I can make out on this inscription. And this kind of leaf seems to be very popular imagery in that period of that time. Here's the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, in its better days. Today, I would not set foot in Sana'a. It's being torn apart between the Houthis and the, what was the old government. The Houthis are very busy picking up every last Jew that still is in Yemen and kicking them out. That's what they're doing right now. And so, but it's a fairy tale type city. You look at the artwork on the building, and this is what you would think of a 1001 Arabian Nights type structure, old Sana'a. So what happened to Jews there, right? It's somewhere around the 10th century that the Zaidis start to pick up persecution, and very, very difficult persecution, to the point that the Jewish community was under extreme emotional distress, and a false prophet arose who claimed that he was combining both Judaism and Islam, and that he was the prophet foretold in the Bible. And the Jewish community began to follow him. So some of the leaders wrote to the Rambam in Egypt, Maimonides in Egypt, for guidance. And he penned what is known as the Igeret Teman, still a very famous letter. We have the copy till today. And it made a tremendous impression on the Yemenite Jews. It gave them the strength and consolation to continue. And instead of collapsing, they abandoned this prophet. They retained their loyalty to Judaism. And as a result, since then, Yemenite Jewish rulings have followed the Rambam. He is their preferred teacher, as opposed to the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Sephardic version, certainly not the Ashkenazic edition of the Ramah, the Israelis. So here's an example from his letter to the Yemenites. He butters them up. He gives them a lot of encouragement. He recognizes that they are, even with all their isolation, very disciplined and very loyal and dedicated. And so you can see his wording, very flowery wording. For verily from the root of truth and righteousness has blossomed a faithful offshoot. From the well springs of loving kindness, a large ravine that stretches itself out in the lands of Yemen to water therewith all gardens and cause the flowering of all buds. In other words, this great piety and learning is bringing reward to all those, spiritual reward to all those who followed them. And he goes on, they open their houses to the poor, give bread to the poor. They have their caravans and their hands are outstretched to all their travelers. And they're known for pursuit of righteousness and their diligence, right? So that Rambam is recognizing that that's their reputation already by then. And he encourages them to stand fast and not give in. Well, they carry some of the most ancient traditions we have. Neither Ashkenazi nor Sephardi. The Sephardic tradition is really the imposition, we'll call it, of the Spanish rabbis when they got back to the Turkish realms and overtook the other Jewish traditions because they were so powerful in terms of their prestige and their knowledge. It influenced a little bit the Yemenite Jews, but not as strong. And they retained, as I say, traditions from the Babylonian academies, which are traditions that Maimonides himself actually retained. And among other things, they retained books that we did not have. They were excellent grammarians. When you see all those dots in your prayer book and you don't know what they are, the Yemenites were the ones who preserved the meaning of the dots for us. They corrected the prayer book so that we find out now, today, that many of the vocalizations that we have in the text in our prayer books are wrong, grammatically wrong. And a lot of the modern publishers are picking up the text from the Yemenites and correcting it to match, correcting the Ashkenazic editions, at least, to match the Yemenite edition, where the grammar calls for it. But some things, their pronunciation also. If any of you ever saw, there was a TV series many, many years ago, Masada. And the producers wanted to have authentic-looking Jews. So they filmed the Yemenite Jews chanting, and that's the official Jew that they used to indicate the fighters of Messiah. Now, we don't know if that's the Hebrew of the land of Israel. There's many different versions of the Hebrew of land of Israel and of Babylonia. But they preserve one of the oldest versions for sure. So how do we know? You have the Gimel. Everybody knows Gimel, the G. Sometimes it has a dot in it. Why on earth does it have a dot in it? Because it's supposed to be a Gimel. And you're supposed to say, not Goy Gadol, but Joy Gadol. Right? Like Jack. Dalid. Dalid has a dot in it sometimes. Well, D is a D, except when it has a dot, it's the. Right? It's like the English TH, but softer version. Israelis have trouble with Z when they want to say the. The Yemenites wouldn't. They would say the. Tav. Right? The Ashkenazim, right? We have two kinds of tav. We have tav and sav. Right? We have a dot in it, it becomes a tav. No dot, it's a sav. Right? But nobody else does except for the Yemenites, because they have, with the dagesh, ta, without. Right? They switch it around. So it's Yom HaShabbat instead of Yom Shabbat. Vav. We use a V. No, it's a wow. The Persians also do it. If you ever listen to them, also. What? And so there's a joke. My father-in-law used to make fun of Ashkenaz, and he said, you know, Moses tells children of Israel, God tells Moses, Tav B'nai Israel. That's how we hear it as Ashkenazim. He says, wait a minute. Tzav is a Hebrew word for a frog. No. It's tzau. Tzau means command. Tzav means a frog. Right? Makes fun of us. Het. Right? We usually do the het and the chaf the same, but no. Het is much softer. Then we've got a sound. Remember Aleph and Ayin. Why on earth do we have an Aleph and Ayin as kids learning in Hebrew school? We don't know why. And so when we go to write Hebrew, we don't know whether to use an Aleph or an Ayin. Sephardic Jews, a lot of our Sephardic Jews do have a sound difference. The Yemenite Jews would never have a problem. Ayin is ayin. It's from the throat. Deep. Ayin. And you can sometimes listen to it. You'll hear it. It's called voice pharyngeal frictive, if anybody knows what that means. Some Sephardim have a softer version. Tzadi. We use a tzadi, tzeh. They have tzeh. The Sephardim also. The Persians do it also. The kuf. We call it kuf, a hard K. The original is aguf. Gut. Like gutter. You ever hear them say the country Qatar correctly? It's gutter. That's the same kuf. Reish, it is an alveolar trill rather than uvular trill. I do not know the difference. It's sounding reish. And you can see the example in Arabic, which I came out to read. Okay. Now, vowel sounds also. Similar to Ashkenazim, they have o. All of you know the song, Kometz Aleph o, Kometz Beis bo. The Yemenites have o. The Sephardim have ah. Modern Israeli Hebrew has ah. They have o. The patach, which is an ah sound. We say ah. And they have the sigol, 3 dots on there, which we say eh. They're both ah. We have shvana and shvanach. Shvana, no sound, they have ah. Chataf. Some of you know your dikduk. Hey at the end. Oh, Barbara, you know this. Mapik. Hey with a mapik. At the end becomes a, has a ha. You strengthen the sound. You ever seen hey at the end with a dot? That's the mapik. So those are just some examples. And the variations also, because it's a hilly country, even within that country, there are many variations. The Yemenites among themselves can never agree on anything. They are the ancestors of the jokes about 2 Jews, 3 synagogues, because they have
The what?
Is the authentic, meaning Balad, the land, the original of the land. Shami, meaning the land of Syria and Iraq. If you talk about ISIS, they announce themselves as Asham, from Sham, meaning the land of Syria and Iraq. And then there are Dardaim, the Maimonidean followers. So three different groups. Only one Jew, but three different groups. Okay, what also influenced them? Kabbalah from Tzfat of the Arabian did make a profound impression on the community. Some Jews went in that period to Israel and established a Kabbalistic school in Jerusalem in the 1700s. And they still continue till today. I don't know if it's the original Yemenite Jews, but that institution still continues. It's believed that the Hasidim from Poland came to Jerusalem to study Kabbalah around that time, saw the Simonim. They don't call it Peot, they call them Simanim, signs, and adapted it for themselves. And here you see, and I'll show you this fellow later on again, the Simonim, the long curled Peot, and you see a artist rendering of Hasidic Rebbe, maybe it's Rabbi Nachman or Rabbi Yitzchak, the Payas, right? Now, I'll talk later about why. So, an example of the oppression that Jews suffered under is the Orphans' Decree. It was obligated under the Zaidi state that any child born is born as a Muslim. It is only his parents that lead the child astray and take him into their religion. While the child is under the parents' control, that's the parents' right. But once the parent has died and the child was a minor, that child was taken by the state away from the family and converted to Islam. There was a theory when the oil embargoes took place that the Saudi minister in charge of oil affairs at that time, it was going back to 73, had a name that sounded like a Yemenite name. And there's some Yemenite Jews that thought maybe he was a child of, or was one of these kidnapped Jews and sold off and raised in the court. Who knows? The decree was ignored for a while under the Turks. Turks were trying to modernize, they really were. They were Europeanized and they were modernizing. But after World War I, Yemen got its independence. The Imam Yahya, who was himself a very disciplined and decent person, but he was a devout Muslim under the Zaidi perspective, reinstituted the law. So, for example, and it didn't matter how high up you were. My wife's family were in the royal court. Her aunt was married off to her husband as a child because both of them were orphaned, and it was done so they would escape being kidnapped under that law, even though the family itself was highly respected in the court, and the king said, I cannot do anything. All I can do is to warn you and have them married off. It happened many times many Yemenites can tell you the story of marriages because of trying to save them from being kidnapped. Another horrible edict, what was called the exile of Mauza, which was for the Yemenite Jews the equivalent of their Holocaust, or the equivalent before that of the pogroms of Khmelnytsky. It's called the Galut Mauza, the exile of Mauza, where the Jews from Sana, the main city, or the main population, were forced into exile into the desert. They were marched off to die, and at least 20% did die. And the only thing that saved them, this is the end of the 1600s, the only thing that saved them was that the Yemenites recognized that after losing their Jews in about a year's time, nobody was doing the important work of craftsmanship and manufacture and merchandising that the Yemenites were counting on the Jews to do, because they never worked on anything except farming and war. They discovered they needed the Jews, so they brought them back. That's what saved the Jews. Other acts of oppression. The Persians went through the same thing. Ask Persian Jews, you'll see the same thing. Jews are considered to be impure, forbidden to touch a Muslim or a Muslim's food. All right? This is under the Shiites. That's Khomeini and his gang. And it is said that the peyot, the simanim, among the Yemenite Jews were not because they were very pious and kept the peyot of the Bible, but because the Yemenites could not touch dead bodies. They used the Jews to do their dirty work for them, literally. And so they had the Jews pick up dead warriors from the battlefields because those were impure. And Jews were impure, so it's okay. And to keep the Jew from being shot by mistake in the middle of battle, they grew their locks long so they would not be mistaken for the enemy by a fellow Muslim. Okay, Muslim is in the middle of battle, sees a guy with a long curl, says, okay, leave him alone. They were obligated to humble themselves before a Muslim to walk on the left side and greet him first. They could not build houses higher than a Muslim to ride a camel or a horse. This is in general in Islamic law. So my friend tells me of his father who was together with his brother and he was riding on a horse. And he was arrested for riding on a horse. So he had the authorities take the brother as a hostage, spend the night in jail. He went back home, found the money to bribe the official who then released him. So I said, well, why didn't he spend the night in jail? Because if he would spend the night in jail, nobody would be able to find the money. He was the businessman, right? That's justice. Of course, you could always bribe your way outside. Multiple stories of bribing. To ride on a donkey or mule, you have to sit sideways, right? How do women ride on horses? Side saddle, remember this? Because it was improper, so the Jew was made to ride like a woman. Upon entering a Muslim quarter, a Jew had to take off his footgear and walk barefoot. Jewish quarter would be placed outside the walls of the city, not behind the protection of the wall. So if there's a war, the Jews got it first. And if attacked with stones or fists by Islamic youth, a Jew was not allowed to defend himself. He could flee or he could beg for mercy, but he couldn't defend himself. So the upside, though, was that then Jews were allowed to be jewelers because creating jewelry and selling it for a profit was considered usury. You're taking gold and you're adding a cost to the gold. That's usury, and therefore a Muslim wouldn't do it. So throughout the Middle East, actually, Jews were their jewelers. Till today, then, Yemenite Jews were the jewelers. Trades, silversmithing, blacksmithing, repairing weapons and tools, weaving, all the skilled trades of industry until modernity were occupations exclusively taken by Jews. Muslims were farmers and they were warriors, and the Jews did the things that they needed to survive. The Jew was not his own person. He was owned by the local Muslim tribe. Now, there's a benefit to being owned by your local tribe, which means that they don't really want you to get killed because you're doing the work for them. You're a valuable financial asset. You're acquiring capital, doing the marketing, the merchandising side, but for the benefit of the tribe. So if a Jew would be killed in Muslim countries, we have the idea of kofar, blood money. Instead of executing the guy, the other family pays enough money, compensation. In most Islamic countries, the bribe money, blood money for a Jew was less than that for a Muslim. In Yemen, it was the opposite. If you killed a Muslim, the blood money was low. If you killed a Jew, it was high. Why? The money didn't go to the family. The money went to the tribe that lost a financial asset. All right, that's life. Whenever people tell you about the wonders of Muslims towards Jews, it was all relative. Okay, on the other hand, poverty has its benefits. Why? Yemenite dishes were very simple. And so they did not have a tradition of baked sweet desserts. Desserts, less raw sugar. Dessert was jale, and it's served before dinner. Nuts, seeds, fruits, and dinner was a basic soup with chicken, one spice, favorite spice, hawaj, which is curcumin and some pepper. All right, shawiyah, broiled beef, piece of broiled beef. And you had key spices like chilbe, which is a dip made from fenugreek. You would take your salufa, the flat bread, or the kubana, which is a slow-rising bread for Shabbat, and that's your big meal. And it's very good. Chilbe is very good. Ask anybody who's used it. It's a slightly pungent taste. It adds flavor to everything. As I said, the hawaj, which is turmeric and black pepper. Cardamom, also known as hell. You'll see this also throughout the Middle East. In your gawe, coffee. As I said, it originated in Yemen. And then refined butter, much like the ghee of the Indians. Very little fried foods. And as a result, you see, poverty has a benefit. They had no cardiac and diabetes problems till they came to Israel. And they got a richer diet. And so in Yemen, they were small and strong, and in Israel, they became tall and sick. All right? What can I tell you? They had They're known as hardworking and diligent, very detailed-oriented, very precision-oriented. The only indulgence among more the village Yemenites was what they shared with the Muslims. You couldn't get good Seagram 7 or Jimmy Walker whiskey, it's a Muslim country, so you chew gut, mild narcotic. You'll see Yemenites, Jewish and Muslim Yemenites with a big bulge in the cheek. It's where they put a load of gut leaves and they're chewing it and chewing it. That's the only indulgence that they had. Okay. They said that exile stopped when the Zaydi leaders discovered they lost their very valuable Jews. So, coming into the 19th century, condition of the Jews of Yemen miserable, 30,000 in total. By the time they left Yemen, I think there were about 50,000 total who left Yemen, primarily Aden, Sana'a, some other cities. Airlifted out of Operation on Eagle's Wings, also sometimes referred to as Magic Carpet, during 49 to 50. As I said, 49,000 Yemenite Jews in the state of Israel. A few thousand were left behind. Gradually, they've been pulled out. A handful now still in Yemen, and the Houthis are tormenting them. And there may not be any left by the time we finish this service, possibly. Because they were so undernourished and underweight, you could pack more on the plane, like twice capacity. And I recommend Fly Alaska Airlines as appreciation, because that's the airlines that provided the planes. So here's, all right, crowded plane, seats are squeezed tight inside, no seat belts. You'll notice that you can't get seat belts, no safety cushions or anything like that. You did what you did to get out. Okay, other things. Now, the benefits of poverty. The Muslim world was intellectually poor for quite a long time because despite their advancement, when we come to the development of printing, the Ottoman rulers and the other Muslim rulers saw what happened when you let the people get printed Bibles in their hand. They kill the kings and leads to rebellions and uprisings. And so they, although they started also with printing presses, they soon banned the printing presses from the Muslim world. And for about 200 years, the Muslim world stepped backwards as a result and never caught up. The Turks caught up, the Iranians caught up, the rest of the Arab world, the Muslim world, has taken a long time to catch up because of that mistake. So, but as a result, Jews in Yemen could not get books. Jews in other parts of the Islamic realms could get books printed from Italy or Amsterdam, but they couldn't get to Yemen. It was too far. And so the teacher, the Mori, would have one book on the table, and all the children would be sitting around the table looking at one book. And they would rotate their position. Whatever position you were reading that day, you were reading the book upside down or from the right side or from the left side. You were learning to read whatever angle that book was. Till today, you ask old-time Yemenites to read something, hold the book any way you want, and they read it fine. Benefits of oppression. Okay, so here's a picture of a child. This may be with the Murray, maybe with his father. Notice in the home. Maybe it's a blacksmithing shop. There's a hammer here and a tool of some kind. The child has his book open. They have two copies, so he's able to read it to his father, reads it out loud. Every boy would begin chanting publicly on Shabbat from the Aramaic translation of the Torah, the Targum, by age 4 or 5. In other words, the little child was speaking Yemenite Arabic, which is an old version of Arabic with Hebrew words, just like Yiddish is an old German, Ladino is an old Spanish. He was learning the Hebrew of the prayer book. He also was fluent in the Targum, the Aramaic language, because he was learning the Torah translation, and of course he was learning a little bit of Talmud as well. So they could read. It's like asking a 4-year-old to read French after he's been learning English in school, right? So I want to show you here a teacher teaching the child. Let's see if I can get this to come up correctly. There we go. Let's see. Wait a second. Load. Yeah, this is the Mori. The More, or master. You want a prize? They want a big prize or a little prize? No, he's going on. He says, do you want a lemon? A
עם מקל או בלי מקל?
עם מקל.
Honestly.
מי ידע את האותיות? אני! טוב, בסדר, בעזרת השם. להסתכל. טוב, טוב. איך קוראים לאות הזאת? אלף. אלף. ואיך קוראים לאות הזאת? ב. ב. תגידו עוד פעם. ב. יפה מאוד. מי אמר יפה? כל הכבוד. חברה שלה בבלי עין. ו. כל הכבוד. זאת עם עין. ו. חברה שלה בלי עין. ו. יפה. זאת.
רימל.
ג'ימל. איך? לא שמעתי.
ג'ימל.
ג'ימל. איזה יופי. וזאת חברה של הרימל. רימל. וזאת.
Okay. So notice here the use of the metaphor. If you listen, the little dot, he calls it the eye. He covers his eye. Oh, this one is missing her eye. He uses a friend, girlfriend, chavera, or girlfriend, right? That's an old tactic by the Melamed to personalize letters. My father would say, they taught me chayal aleph, chayal base, little animal aleph, little animal base, right? Techniques going back, way back. So he's using that. Okay, so we get cultural and spiritual resilience. We have leaders who give new direction and become the classic heroes of Yemenite literature and history. Shabazi, the poet Shabazi, Rabbi Chaim Shabazi, Isham Shabazi, and the Maharitz, Reina Abav Salach. Okay, so now let's a little bit about Shabazi, Shalom Shabazi. You cannot get away in Israel without learning the songs of Rabbi Shabazi because they become part of the cultural heritage, not just of the Yemenites, but of Israel in general. A lot of the rap groups worked with Ofra Haza, incorporated some of Shabazi's liturgy into their rap songs through Ofra Haza. 1619 to 1720, famous for Hebrew, Aramaic, and Judeo-Arabic poetry, Kabbalistic works, astrology works, considered as the Shakespeare of Yemen. 15,000 liturgical poems on everything under the sun. We only have 850, 15,000. And they're collecting a work that we call the Diwan, meaning a collection of poetry in Judeo-Arabic, Hebrew and Judeo-Arabic. So here's a common one, which is Ayalat Chen, a graceful gazelle. Begalut tismacheni, in my exile, support me. Uvalayla, b'tocheka milani, la la la. And in the evening, in my bosom, she will lodge me. So it's a love poem, and yet it's also a poem about the exile of the Jewish people. So here it is. A song and dance. Oh, this is, let's see. Yeah. A little bit jazzed up version. you can see how the rhythm, it's rhythmic music, and because of that, you can adapt it to Western and pop music very well. Another one from Shabazi, also very well known, Imna Nin Alu. This is the one that Arfa Haza made famous. She passed away, unfortunately, at a young age, but she was making it on the American rap scene with these variations. And we may call it dilution, we may call it pollution of the purity of the sound. But it, again, lent itself very well. I'm going to show you, though, a very traditional version. Imnin alu dalte nedivim, dalte marom lonin alu. Right? If the doors of the powerful are locked, the doors of heaven will never be locked. El chai merumam al kruvim kulam brucho ya'alu el chai. O great God, the God of life, higher than the angels, reigns supreme. All right, so now you're going to see this as a men's dance, and notice the instrument, the only instrument allowed Jews. I could give it a second. No, it starts slow, builds rhythm. That's the characteristic. Okay. And now you know where breakdancing comes from. Go ahead. I'm going to just finish up. The other figure significant is Maharitz, which is the abbreviation for Morenu Harav, our teacher, the rabbi. Yahya ben Yosef Salih. Now, that name in modern Hebrew becomes Hebraicized to Tzadok, which is my wife's family. He was the chief rabbi of Sana, 1715. He created, we may call, the purification of Yemenite customs and traditions. What does that mean? They have become influenced by Kabbalah, and there was also another push by Jews from, as I say, Shami, from Babylonia, Syria, and that region, who had moved in to introduce their customs. He resisted it. He said, we have to go back to our original customs. We have to go back to our original prayer book, and we have to go back to the customs that are aligned with the teachings of the Rambam. And is the first man to author a history of the Jews of Yemen. Right? That's his reputation. Now, if you remember our Torah reader, Rabbi Tzadok, Shmuel Tzadok, was a distant cousin in my wife's family, also from the descendant of this family, wrote me a letter about the Maharitz, and I'm going to summarize it. He wrote it in Hebrew. His fame and reputation was that there was a great drought. And when there was a drought, the Muslims would call on the Jews to pray for them because they believed God listened to the Jews more than to their own imams. And so they call on the Jews and says, you guys got to pray for us, pray louder. And so 3 days went by and not a drop of rain had gone by. They're praying and praying. So he looks up at the sun and he denounces the sun at Shifcha Harufa, which means you despised maidservant. How long will you stand while our people die? And when he says that, it says the rains began to fall. All of a sudden, one drop hit his eye. His eye was never the same after that, but the drought ended. All right, and that is his reputation as a great miracle worker. As Jews, often, both the Muslims and Christians would turn to the rabbis ahead of their own priests because they believed much of what they said, which was that we were the chosen. We went off astray, but maybe we still had a connection. So this is the prayer book he put together, which became the standard for Yemenite Jews, Tichla, which means we might say inclusive. It's kind of a later edition, but I also have in my possession a manuscript. And here's what you are missing when you don't have print, right? You take your page and you write all on the margins all around. That's what you get. Right? You write in the margins all around. And so this is his manuscript. Somebody wrote on the margins. He wrote his name on it, Salih. In the end, he put his initials also by writing his name, what we call a reverse Hebrew alphabet. Aleph becomes a Taf and so on. So he coded his name into it. I had some other figures, and then I'm going to wrap up, introduce you to my wife's family. The Kafich, Rabbi Kafich, the grandfather who introduced modern science into the Yemenite Jewish community. And he's shown here with astronomical measuring equipment, scales, a thermometer, because he introduced the study of science. This is the end of the 19th century. Reintroduced the rigorous logic of Maimonides, was denounced by it, tremendous split in the Jewish community. His grandson, Rabbi Kapach, my wife's uncle, earned the prize of the State of Israel for his research in Jewish texts. When he was 11, at the age of 11, he and his grandfather were walking in the cemetery. The grandfather saw something unusual, had him dig it up. There was a cement pot. He opened the cement pot. Inside was an old manuscript. Now, so this 11-year-old boy had the job of unraveling the manuscript, opening it carefully, hand copying word for word the text of the manuscript. It turns out that this was a manuscript going back 1,000 years before, from Rabbi Nathan, a commentary on the Mishnah of 1,000 years before. And that was the man. Here's an 11-year-old boy who is the one who's correcting the manuscript. And then it's gotten to us for print. So we have, because there's an 11-year-old boy, at 13, he went on a manuscript of Maimonides, Guide for the Perplexed, and copied that, the Judeo-Arabic, at 13. All right? And by 14, he was the rabbi of the community. As I said, he had to be married off to my aunt because he was a young orphan, right? And so this is Rabbi Kapach officiating at my wedding. There's me, I was a little bit younger, that's Oprah's father. And this Oprah's aunt who married him, so they were, Kapach and Sarah were cousins anyway. She married him. She was a one-woman social worker organization, famous. She won the Israel Prize for social work. So it was the only case where a couple, husband and wife, both won the Israel Prize, the highest prize in Israel, for their work separately, each one on his or her own. Famous for that. And that's my wife's aunt, Racha. Now this fellow, very handsome fellow, many, many years ago, my mother found you remember my mother, she loved to paint. So she found a Yemenite jeweler on the cover of Hadassah magazine. And so, it's a nice figure, I'm going to paint the picture. And then years later, we got married. She came to Jerusalem. She was in the synagogue. She looked at the guy and says, that's the guy I painted the picture of, right? So he was also another one of my wife's uncles, Rabbi Yosef Tzadok, Uncle Yosef Tzadok. And he was the founder of modern Yemenite silversmith work in Israel. When the silversmiths came to Israel, they needed to come up with designs that would be marketable for the modern market. He was the one who set up the workshops for them, and my wife's father was also involved in it. And if you've been to the King David before, it's about 10 years since it's been sold off, the annex of the King David, there was a jewelry shop at the entrance of the King David, where there's an annex as you walk in. That's my wife's father's jewelry shop. It was there for many, many years. Right? So he died at the age of 108. And the Yemenites originally wouldn't let him leave because he was responsible for minting their coins. There were no Muslim jewelers who could do that properly. His business was minting the coins for the government. So at the age of 105, he gets this letter from school district. You have to register for kindergarten. Right? The computer didn't recognize the date. And so they had him listed as the age of 5 instead of 105. So he gets a letter calling him to sign up for kindergarten. Great. Okay. Some other figures, my wife's grandfather, great-grandfather, who was one of the first Yemenite pioneers in 1882. And the house, at least up till 30 years ago, still was standing that he had built. On my mother's father's grandmother's side, okay, the grandfather of the family, Rachabi, one of his children married the daughter of Golda Meir. Family connection. This is my wife's grandmother, Jade. She made it well past 100, and she was treated like royalty. All the children and cousins and nephews would come to visit her every Saturday night. Just some family pictures. My wife's grandfather on the mother's side and her grandmother. He came to Israel as a youngster just at the outbreak of World War I, served in the Jewish Legion, was proud of still getting a British pension from them. Both of them spoke Yiddish because they were both raised in Old City of Jerusalem where everybody spoke Yiddish. And there, my mother-in-law and her mother dressed up in costume for Purim. A wedding picture from my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. No Yemenite costume for this. They're American or Europeanized completely by this time. This is the 1930s. He was a wholesale and retail grocery, come in ahead of the rest of the family because it was a well-to-do family. So they set him and his brother ahead to set up the groundwork so that they would eventually come. Known as the Mukhtar, which means the king of the neighborhood. He would help people get housing, arrange for marriages, resolve disputes, and distribute charity. And she ran a little restaurant, and he opened up his Zadok Antiquities and Jewelry. The only one in the jewelry family is my wife's brother. His son, who is in Houston, has one of the biggest jewelry stores in the United States. Still in the family. His jewelry store, I was in there many times, helped out when I was a student. Clients included Moshe Dayan, Israeli government leaders would come into the store and buy gifts for foreign dignitaries. U.S. government officials came in, buy gifts to give to the Israeli government. That was that store. In Beverly Hills, it's closed already, but there was on Rodeo Drive an antiquities dealer called Barakat. So we walked into him and said, oh, antiquities, chatted with him, and they mentioned, oh, my father-in-law's an antiquity. Oh, who? He started me in my business. There was an Arab from Bethlehem. He would buy stuff from my father-in-law. That's how he got started. Ended up in Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive. Well, this is me and Ofra, my mother, blessed memory, in costume. These are bridesmaid costumes rather than the wedding costume. But this is, okay, pictures of life in Sana among the Jewish community. You can see the traditional dress. Guess who wore the pants in the family? It's the women wear the pants. The men have robes, the women have the pants under the robes. Synagogue picture. And finally, display of a bridal costume, full regalia. It was set up by my wife's aunt at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and their photo of an Israeli bride. Notice all the jewelry, the gold embroidery and gold work into the crown. Crowns are huge. They're bigger than the bride. So I'm going to finish up with a women's dance, and we'll call it for our Shabbat. I'll put this on for you. Let's hear traditional women's dance.
علشان المطر والرع تلا والرعد والزنينة هلا من عين جيلك يا هلا ويا الملح من عينه هلا من عين جيلك يا الملح من عينك يا دفاع الله والرعد والزنينة من عين جيلك يا الملح من عينه يا ويا المليح من عينه يا فارقين الحب لي حينه يا فارقين الحب لي حينه لا 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 خلي يا خلي الهم والوسواس يا خلي الهم والوسواس واسمع كلامي ولا تسمع كلام الناس واسمع كلامي ولا تسمع كلام الناس واسمع كلامي ولا تسمع كلام الناس لا جر خاطرة بلاس والس لساك يزلال
Now, I just want to scroll up. I want to see this, the comments on the page. Let's see if I can pull this up for us. I just want to show you the comments on the page. Let's see if I can get it. Notice all the comments are in Arabic. The people who are watching it are Arabs. They're interested in it. They're fascinated by it because it's part of their culture as well. So I just put that up for us. All right, something that we can find. Maybe we can share some things in common. Okay, we're going to turn off our sharing screen. All right, I'm going to turn off my There we go. We're all back in place. To all of you, Carmen, do you want me to pass the baton to you, or
No, because I'm gonna, Barbara and I are gonna have lunch.
Oh, so you're going to break. So we're going to call it for this time. Yoni's not here. Okay. I hope all of you enjoyed the dancing, the dance performance.
Thank you very much.
Okay, learned something new.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was absolutely beautiful.
Okay. 2 weeks from now, we're going to get Jamaica. Jamaica. So we're going around the world. We'll have Jamaica. Carmen really did a beautiful job. She set it up with us. A nice conversation with the representative of the community. And later on, we'll get past high holidays. We got crypto Jews, and we have Jews of China. We'll have a lot of other interesting groups to come in. All right, so everybody, Shabbat Shalom. And I'm going to
Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to call it at this point. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.